Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Nossos programas oferecem vários idiomas. Acesse suprememastertv.com/schedule.
From the noble leadership decisions of His Excellency Donald Trump.
What you saw when you were there with President Trump is a practical, problem-solving approach.
To the disastrous actions of Joe Biden and his administration.
They know that Joe Biden's open border policy is a political disaster, so they're trying to hide the consequences of that policy in the dark of night.
Continue watching for a must-see program, America First, America Last. The contrast in the leadership of His Excellency President Donald Trump and Joe Biden, Part 1 of 2.
Non-vegan who? Can't see with all this hell smoke and fire around you.
Greetings, beloved viewers, and welcome to today's show. I'm Angela from Illinois, USA. Our generous people of the United States wish you and your co-citizens more peace and prosperity with each day, in God's love. The United States of America has long been considered the most influential country in the world. Therefore, what happens in the United States, for example, its economic state, ethical standing, and foreign policies, etc., affects other nations. And as such, the fate of the entire world also rests in large part on the leader of the free world, the U.S. President. In this program, we will focus on the stark contrast between the noble leadership decisions of His Excellency Donald Trump, a Shining World Peace Leader Award and Shining World Leadership Award for Compassion laureate, versus the disastrous actions of Joe Biden and his administration that have wreaked havoc and caused much death and suffering in such a short time since coming into office. In the prayer and hope that those in power and Americans wake up, U-turn to save lives, also save themselves from great sin. For the love of humanity, for the love of God. etc. In a previous show, we covered the many achievements of His Excellency Donald Trump during his tenure as the 45th President of the United States, most notably the peace deals mediated in multiple countries that earned him 7 nominations for a Nobel Peace Prize between 2018 and 2021. President Trump is also the first U.S. president in over 40 years not to have started any wars. The following are some highlights from his peace negotiations. President Trump was a key facilitator in talks leading to the signing of the Korean peace and denuclearization agreements by dear respected comrade Kim Jong-un, Supreme Leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and a Shining World Leadership Award for Peace recipient, and His Excellency Moon Jae-in, President of the Republic of Korea, and a Shining World Leadership Award for Peace laureate. President Trump helped advance the historic normalization of ties between Israel and the Kingdom of Bahrain, Morocco, Qatar, Sudan, and the United Arab Emirates, between Kosovo and Serbia, and between Qatar and Bahrain, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. All these countries are Shining World Leadership Award for Peace laureates. His Excellency Donald Trump was also the first American president to address an assembly of leaders from more than 50 Muslim nations. Furthermore, President Trump brought thousands of U.S. troops home from foreign bases. And in 2020, he secured the Taliban-US peace deal with conditions to protect Americans and allies while putting an interim government in place.
I talked to a lot of folks in the intel community this week, generals who were on the calls with President Trump when he talked to the head of the Taliban, and they said he made it clear in graphic terms what would happen to the Taliban if they harmed an American soldier. And for 18 months, we did not lose one American service member in Afghanistan. I talked to the Director of National Intelligence, former John Radcliffe, and he said to me, I remember being in the Oval Office with the President, and the President said, John, it's really important that we don't just pull out, that we negotiate a peace deal, an interim government before. If we don't do that, John, how quickly will Afghanistan fall to the Taliban? John Radcliffe said, sir, it would fall very quickly. And the President said, you're exactly right. It would fall in 2 days if we did not negotiate a deal for an incoming government. It's why we must do that. And he repeated over and over again, it will fall in 2 days if we don't do this.
Not only did His Excellency Donald Trump promote peace and stability internationally, but he also ensured the safety and prosperity of the American people back home through his strict but fair immigration policies. For instance, he increased security at the U.S. southern border by deploying over 5,000 troops, built a wall of over 724 kilometers to secure the most vulnerable points of entry, and implemented a Remain in Mexico policy for migrants, thus reducing the chances of human trafficking and human rights violations. President Trump also entered into historic cooperative agreements with Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala to prevent influxes of asylum seekers before their applications were reviewed to ensure the safety of the potential migrants as well as American citizens.
In a few moments, I'll sign legislation continuing my administration's extensive efforts to combat the scourge of human trafficking.
To combat human trafficking, His Excellency acted swiftly and strongly, signing a $430 million bill and an executive order in 2019, plus another $100 million in grants in 2020 to enforce anti-trafficking measures protecting women and children. Deeply valuing humans' precious existence, President Trump proclaimed January 22, 2021, National Sanctity of Human Life Day, honoring every human life, whether born or unborn, young or old, healthy or sick. Every person is made in the holy image of God.
All children, born and unborn, are made in the holy image of God.
This pro-life statesman is the first American president in history to attend the March for Life, an annual rally protesting abortion, and implemented numerous measures to end the cruel practice. For example, he defunded organizations that perform abortions and blocked U.S. federal funding for foreign non-governmental organizations that promote these life-ending operations. Moreover, his administration also stopped federal funding of fetal tissue research.
Administration ended federal funding of fetal tissue research.
Additionally, President Trump issued an executive order requiring all hospitals to provide medical treatment for infants in need, regardless of their circumstances at birth, thus protecting vulnerable babies.
As what you saw when you were there with President Trump is a practical problem-solving approach, not ideological, not particularly political. It's like, okay, we've got a problem with immigration, let's build a wall and stop people coming in and control the border. Everywhere you look, you had that practical approach. With these guys, it's entirely ideological, and they haven't got a clue. And I'm afraid it's going to get worse before we can get a new set of people in there who actually know what they're doing.
Now, as we turn to look at the administration of Mr. Joe Biden, we find that his policies and actions are in complete contrast to that of His Excellency President Donald Trump. Let's begin with international diplomacy. In just a few weeks after coming into office, Mr. Biden ordered an airstrike in Syria, and only 3 months into his presidency, he requested an enormous $750 billion defense budget. A few months later, the Biden administration approved the sale of weapons worth $735 million to Israel, amidst deadly clashes between Israel and Palestine. It was only after mounting public pressure did he voice his support for a ceasefire. Joe Biden has further damaged the U.S.'s diplomatic ties with other countries, such as China, Russia, Iran, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, while also losing the respect of the international community.
The Biden administration igniting a war of words with some of America's most dangerous foreign adversaries, all in just a matter of days.
And then to make it even worse, President Biden himself, he calls Putin, he calls him, he says, you're a killer. And then he says, well, Putin doesn't have a soul.
Then, ignoring his intelligence advisors, Mr. Biden pulled U.S. troops out from Afghanistan in a manner that allowed the Taliban to easily take over the country. He also changed the evacuation deadline, despite the Taliban's warning not to do so, giving the Taliban further excuse for a military coup. This left the Afghan nation, especially women and young girls, absolutely frightened for their lives and in a far worse humanitarian and economic situation than they had been before. After U.S. troops left behind the strategic Bagram military air base, along with billions of U.S. dollars worth of military equipment. Joe Biden's administration began a feeble attempt to evacuate hundreds of stranded U.S. citizens and thousands of Afghan allies after the troops were withdrawn, making them vulnerable targets of the Taliban and terrorist groups.
The world has been watching heartbreaking scenes coming from Afghanistan.
Helpless Afghans handing over their children to strangers. One Afghan mother speaks of the unimaginable pain of being separated from her daughters who've been left behind, while she managed to land on US shores with her husband.
Who live?
I can't. I'm dead. I'm dead.
To make matters even worse, Joe Biden bowed to the Taliban demands and did not extend the evacuation deadline of August 30th. As a result, hundreds of Americans and thousands of Afghan allies were still left behind the enemy lines. Moreover, Mr. Biden admitted that his administration had given a list of Americans and Afghan allies to the Taliban, which experts feared would be used as a kill list.
He has lost the trust and confidence of every member of the military and the military families that I'm proud to be a part of. He's lost the trust and confidence of our allies who are now negotiating without us because they don't know why we're doing what we're doing. He's lost the trust and confidence of the American people. And I think if you look at the fact that the jihadists are celebrating in the streets because America was run out of town, and by the way, they left them with billions of dollars worth of equipment and ammunition as a housewarming present. I mean, you couldn't ask for a more embarrassing, humiliating situation than what we have right now. The world is definitely a more dangerous place. Just because we're out of Afghanistan does not mean this war is over.
On August 26th, an ISIS-K terrorist bombing attack at the Kabul airport killed more than 160 innocent Afghans, 13 young U.S. soldiers, 2 Britons, and members of the Taliban, deaths that would not have occurred if Biden had handled the withdrawal with proper strategic planning. Instead, caring only about political optics, Mr. Biden pledged to hunt down ISIS-K in vengeance and ordered a drone attack that failed and tragically took the lives of 10 innocent civilians instead, including 7 children and an aid worker. In summary, it is no wonder that Biden's fellow Democrat leaders joined the rest of the world in condemning the Afghanistan withdrawal as a fatally flawed disaster of unbelievable proportions. Domestically, we find the Biden administration's same style of disorganization, self-interest, and blatant lack of concern for human lives. Beginning in March 2021, the U.S.-Mexico border faced a migrant surge, the highest in 21 years, including tens of thousands of unaccompanied children. This was due to an open border policy that the Biden administration projected, resulting in unprepared, deplorable, and crowded conditions with very little COVID-19 safety precautions and testing in place, worsening the spread of the pandemic and overall burden to the local American communities. In addition, illegal drugs and human trafficking at the border increased exponentially.
The humanitarian crisis at our southern border, with U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents executing more than 100,000 apprehensions in February alone.
In the Rio Grande Valley sector alone, all of last year, they made 90,000 apprehensions. Already this year, in the first 2.5 months of this year, they've made about 110,000 apprehensions. Including in those apprehensions are 800 criminal aliens who have previously been arrested and exported from the United States, 78 sex offenders, and 62 gang members, which include MS-13 gangs. The Border Patrol officers themselves told me that the reason for the change, the reason for the increase in the influx, is because of the policy change by the Biden administration. The Border Patrol officers told me that the Biden administration policies, they are enriching and they are empowering the drug cartels in Mexico who make money off of the people that they assist in smuggling them into the state of Texas.
While some migrants were forcibly deported, many others, including children, were quietly transported and released in cities across the U.S., including by airplane at night. As a result of these deplorable immigration blunders, there are now more than 45,000 unaccompanied migrant minors unaccounted for in the U.S.
They know that Joe Biden's open border policy is a political disaster, so they're trying to hide the consequences of that policy in the dark of night.
Despite the crisis, it was months before Kamala Harris, who was put in charge of the border, even paid a visit to the border. More recently, her focus on gender strategy over multiple national crises, including the border, inflation, and rising gas prices, further reflected how much she is out of touch with her co-citizens' needs. Later, The Biden administration faced another crisis when more than 10,000 mostly Haitian migrants arrived at Del Rio, Texas. After ordering U.S. Border Patrol agents to deter them from entering, Joe Biden scapegoated these agents by falsely accusing them of ill-treating the Haitians. This pretense of caring for the Haitian people is contradicted by his previous heartless statement that it would not matter to the United States if Haiti sank into the sea. Shockingly, border officials revealed that migrants have been released without COVID-19 testing at a time when the Delta variant has been raging throughout the nation. Regarding abortion, it has been said that there has never been a U.S. president who supports this deplorable act more than Joe Biden. He and his administration tried to sue the Texas government to stop its abortion ban, and has been pushing for massive increases in the funding of abortions both in the United States and overseas. etc. When our program continues, we'll explore even more contrasts between the policies of His Excellency President Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Esteemed viewers, thank you for your company today. Be sure to join us for part 2 of this revealing show on Wednesday, November 10th. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television for pickled bean curd crisps, boiled cabbage, and cabbage soup right after noteworthy news. May divine grace be showered upon us all.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/GG.